Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Health Confidential. Today, I have such an important message, but also a very educational podcast for you guys because I really want you to understand the importance of taking care of our most important and biggest organ. That is our skin. It actually protects the inner environment from the outer environment, which we all know is super toxic and full of chemicals. And I have such an important and amazing expert that could speak to everything that we're about to discuss. Sylvia Wynans is my guest today, originally from Poland, so a very good neighbor of mine from Europe. And she has spent 12 years traveling extensively as a yacht crew. So very eloquent out on the seas before she settled in Mallorca to start her family. And during her pregnancy, just to give you guys an idea of how she got to where she is today, advocating for skincare, during her pregnancy, she was drawn to the holistic and natural solutions, as all moms are when they're pregnant. And this is what sparked the idea for a side by side experiment testing plant oils as sun protection. And when she shared a picture of her experiment, it went viral. So it set her on this unexpected journey. So she was inspired by this overwhelming response, and she just started to go deeper into photobiology, plant physiology, and quantum biology. Such fascinating stuff, so that she can understand why certain oils actually act like sunscreen. Her research obviously uncovered decades of studies that we are obviously unaware of, but she'll make us aware of them during this conversation. And these studies actually showed how plant derived phytochemicals naturally enhance the skin's defense system and defense mechanism against sun damage. So, realizing the potential to optimize skin protection without chemicals, Sylvia went on to found EarthChild. So, this is her company, and developed what is known as Quantum Pi, which is a face serum that protects the skin from UV and HEV light. She will talk about that as well. And this is done using plant compounds. She's obviously very dedicated to educating others. She's the one who approached me. She wants to get the message out about natural holistic approaches, which you guys all know I'm very aligned with. And she wants to dive deeper into sun protection to champion the body's wisdom over chemical solutions. Sylvia, welcome to my show. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for this beautiful introduction, and thank you for having me.
Yes, you are so amazing and such an expert in this. So when you and I spoke off camera, of course, you showed me this amazing picture that went viral. So let's start there. What exactly happened? How did you start the journey with that picture?
Yeah, so it all started when I was pregnant with my daughter. I didn't want to put any chemicals on my skin. I kind of naturally was really averse to anything that isn't natural. And Mallorca being like a very beautiful, sunny place, I was looking for something to protect my skin from sun damage. And I found some information online about some oils having sun protective properties. And so I wanted to try them. And then this idea for experiment came to basically compare them. So when my ex-partner was making a sandwich one day, he wasn't wearing a shirt, it was beautiful sunny day, and there was a roll of paper tape next to him in the kitchen. And I looked at his back, at his skin on his back, and I looked at the tape. And this aha moment, it's like, ooh, what if I could put some tape on his back to create a grid and put different oils in different sections separated by the tape, and ask him to sit in the sun. So that's what I did. And after 1 hour, you could definitely see that the oils are sun protective. They behave like sunscreen. And that really started this whole train that I'm on now. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the picture that went viral. And for those of you that are listening audio to this, if you were to see, her skin is immaculate. I mean, she's glowing, perfect skin. So clearly she's a walking advertisement for what she is obviously what she created. Of course, she's going to talk to us about that in more detail.
Mhm.
And she could tell us exactly what are some of the things that this serum, these oils, these plant oils do
Mhm.
to protect the skin. But first and foremost, Sylvia, I'd like to start with what exactly inspired you to create Quantum Pie, and basically how does it differ from traditional sunscreens? Because I want the audience to understand your
Mhm.
motivation,
Yeah.
especially behind this product, so that we can provide insight into the importance of natural alternatives. Everybody turns to chemical stuff like in their drugstores
Mhm.
and mainstream stores. And I want to highlight the innovation and the differentiation from chemical sunscreens, because a lot of people
Mhm.
think that that's what's necessary to protect ourselves from what is actually necessary for life. And I want us to also emphasize the holistic approach. So, what inspired you to create Quantum Pie?
Yeah, so after the picture went viral, there were thousands of questions and comments below the pictures
Of
that I
course.
never thought about myself, and I was so eager to actually know the answers as well. I started to do the research, and my first focus was trying to find out what is the SPF factor of different oils. So I was looking for studies that were looking for the SPF calculations of different plant oils and extracts.
Yeah.
And
And
so it took a
just
very
if
long
I can,
time.
just to let the
Mhm.
audience know, so SPF stands for sun
Sun
protection
protection.
factor. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So I was looking for studies that were examining the sun protective factor of different plant oils and extracts.
Hmm.
And they were not easy to find, but I found them. And to explain, to answer all the questions that were given to me by the people that saw my picture, I wrote this really long article about how plants produce these compounds. Because one thing to understand is that plants are really nature's expert in sun protection, and they
Absolutely.
produce thousands of chemicals. So there's tens of thousands of chemicals that they produce in order to support themselves and to reduce sun damage, because plants only use visible light, a fraction of visible light for photosynthesis, and UVA and UVB and all the other wavelengths are as damaging to plants as they are to us.
Hmm.
And so once I wrote this article, a friend of mine read it and he said, wow, it sounds like you're going to have to develop sunscreen now. And before that, it never crossed my mind to create a brand or do anything with skincare. But then I started wondering, like, if I were to do this, what would I use? And so I started going deeper into research. Then I got some samples of the highest quality CO2 extracted oils and extracts from plants
Hmm.
that I found the most fascinating in studies. And I sent them to a university lab for SPF testing. And so based on that, I picked a bunch of extracts that I wanted to use as sun protective in. At first I thought I will create a sunscreen, but then I kind of it became a face serum instead. Yeah, but that's how it started really.
So
Mhm.
not only does it protect the skin, but it also actually nourishes the skin and it gives it what it needs
Well,
so that it can
yes,
be healthy.
exactly. Because the difference between chemical sunscreens is that they only have this one function, to stop the UVA or UVB rays from penetrating our skin. But when we actually examine the studies that study polyphenols, carotenoids, flavonoids, or all the other plant compounds in relation to sun protection, they
Hmm.
do everything. So they're antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. They speak to our genes. They turn on genes that have to do with, that ramp up our UV defenses in the skin, that help with DNA repair, and so on and so on. So chemical compounds, they basically do one thing, plus they can do some other things that are unintended. While plant compounds, it's literally the language that our body uses to stimulate different responses within the skin. Yeah. So
Nature
it's
wins
when you
again.
protect your skin from the sun with these plant compounds, you do everything. They provide anti-inflammatory, anti-aging, antioxidant actions. Yeah.
And how about medicinal properties? So, for example, I'm trying to think of people that, let's
Mhm.
say, have certain things. And I'm a big believer that you heal from the inside out. But
Yes.
certainly there are things that we could put on the skin and they do get absorbed and they do end up even inside the body. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, people that deal with things like rosacea and
Mm-hmm.
eczema and
Yeah.
psoriasis and all of these skin conditions,
Mm-hmm.
clearly, if the plants are providing antioxidants and
Mm-hmm.
polyphenols, clearly they also go and do, let's say, repair to the skin from the
Mm-hmm.
damage that's coming from the toxicity that's inside. Does it address those things as well?
Yeah, exactly that. And I actually have some clients who have rosacea or psoriasis or some other eczemas or some other conditions. And
Hmm.
they use my serum because it helps to control their symptoms. Or sometimes I have this one client in Germany and she just keeps buying the serum because she said this is the only thing she can put on her face. And this is the first time in many years that she's eczema free. Yeah.
This is amazing because not only,
Mhm.
especially for us women, especially those that do care about their appearance, clearly to be able to protect yourself and nourish yourself. So it's sort of like a kill two birds with one stone or a one-stop shop type of thing. This is amazing.
Mhm.
Let's talk about how the plant oils protect the skin from UV
Mhm.
and HEV light, because I want to obviously educate the audience on the
Yeah.
science, because a lot of people
Mhm.
want, oftentimes, especially on my followers, always ask for me to provide them with
Exactly.
backup or with the research or the
Mhm.
studies. So I want them to know about the science behind the protective properties of these plant oils, and I want them to sort of deepen their understanding of natural protection
Mhm.
and how it
Mhm.
compares to the synthetic chemical ingredients that we find in mainstream things.
Mhm.
But before you explain how these plant oils protect the skin, can you first inform the audience, because not everybody's as knowledgeable as you are? So UV
Mhm.
is obviously ultraviolet, right? But what's HEV
Mhm.
light?
That's blue light. That is blue light, yeah.
Okay.
And
Much
so
like what
blue
we
light
get from devices?
from devices, exactly.
Okay.
It's also from the sun, but also from devices, yes.
Okay,
From
fantastic.
tank light, from artificial lighting in our
Okay.
homes and so on. Street lamps, car lights, all of that. Yeah. So there are studies that shows that so because light penetrates our skin at different depths, like UVB light penetrates just a top layer of the skin and causes sunburn. UVA penetrates deeper, and so blue light penetrates even deeper.
Oh,
And
wow.
so what
Okay.
it does is it causes oxidative stress in our extracellular matrix. So it actually affects elastin and collagen. So when we are
Wow.
exposed to these blue light devices, the light from emitted from them, it's damaging our skin. So it's not only the sun, but it's also our devices and our home lighting, etc.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. So blue light, I've never heard that being talked about, because oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
there's, even in the beauty industry, the aesthetic industry, they push the idea that the sun, and arguably sun is what
Mm-hmm.
actually is able to give us life. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
without the sun, we wouldn't be able to produce vitamin D, which is
Mm-hmm.
obviously something that is converted in the skin. So we do need some sort of sun exposure on our skin
Yeah.
to be able to convert the sunshine into vitamin D in the body so that it can have protective.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it offers a lot of protection through our immune system. So,
That's right.
exposure to sun is important. It's just a matter of the fact that we don't always know how much is
Mm-hmm.
too much and how little is too little and what's not enough and
Mm-hmm.
what's the perfect amount. So, if we were to be able to understand that it's not really the sun that's such the enemy, but there
Mm-hmm.
are other lights, such as what you just mentioned right now, the blue light that actually
Yeah.
penetrates, and oftentimes we don't know. So even blue light penetrates the deeper levels of our skin to cause the damage at the cellular matrix, which is probably the deepest layer
That's right.
of the
It's the
skin.
architecture. Yeah.
The
It's
architecture of skin. There you
yes,
go.
it holds
Exactly.
everything together.
So
And
then
makes
that's
it.
the skin probably uses, since that's the architecture, that's the foundation. It's like damaging the foundation of a house.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
so
that's why it's important.
yeah, and because so when our elastin and collagen is exposed to blue light, it generates reactive oxygen species and they cause damage. And because our bodies doesn't like building on damaged cells, they start to release these MMPs, matrix metalloproteinases, so enzymes that break down collagen and elastin that has been damaged. And so, there's less and less of it. So the more damage it is caused to it, as we age, it's not being replaced in the same way. And that's when skin starts to age. Yeah.
So then do these plant oils that are obviously extracted from the plants, I'd love for
Mhm.
you to also speak to what plants exactly these are and
Mhm.
whether they are available worldwide, or is it specific to the region you're in, because you're obviously in Mallorca.
Yeah.
Do these oils only protect, or are they also something that can help the cellular matrix regenerate so that it can reverse some of the damage?
Yeah. So first thing to understand is that, plants they thrive on light. They need light to survive. And
Right.
so because plants only use the visible spectrum to produce energy and carbohydrates, um, um, all the other light wavelengths of light have to be filtered. So plants produce thousands of different chemicals, and
Hmm.
these chemicals, especially the ones with pi electron systems or conjugated double bonds, so these are specific chemical structures that are able to absorb in a UVA, UVB, and visible light spectrum, all the different spectrums of light. And so what happens when these molecules absorb these photons of light of different spectrum is the electrons become promoted to a higher energy orbital. So they absorb the light, they become promoted, and then they vibrated as heat. So
Okay.
then the energy, the photonic energy, isn't passed on. It doesn't damage anything. It basically promotes the electron, and then this energy is being vibrated out. So carotenoids are really good at this, and all the polyphenols and flavonoids. And by the way, just so everybody can understand, it was the discovery of absorption of light by chlorophyll and flavonoids that actually inspired the creation of synthetic sunscreens. So
Wow.
nature is the original blueprint, and synthetic sunscreens are our maybe failed attempt at trying to copy nature and outsmart it. Yeah.
I mean, we've been trying to, not we ourselves, because we obviously both embrace the idea of taking natural approaches to health, but mainstream companies have always tried to circumvent nature's approaches, nature's solutions, and
Mhm.
obviously have gone far beyond trying to monetize whatever they can bring to the market so that people can embrace. However, they do leave such important information that you're providing the audience with right now out so that we can at least make informed decisions. Now, I really have to ask this. So, of course, you're going very deep into the science of it, and thank you so much. I'm sure that in the audience there are people who have studied this to its very depth, probably to the same degree that you have, and they do understand what you mean by obviously the energetic, the vibration. What about melanoma, for example? We know that, or at least that's what science claims, that sun is what causes this kind of damage that leads to the degradation of the skin, and it becomes carcinogenic. Like obviously what we put on it becomes carcinogenic, and a lot of these chemicals burn into the skin, thereby destroying the cells of the skin to create the melanoma. At least I know that to be fact. Does your serum, or do these plant oils that are in your product, do they protect against that?
Um, so it's difficult for me to say exactly how they protect, because there aren't really studies that study this in depth. But what we know from animal studies, for example,
Hmm.
let's say it's one of the first studies that actually looked at skin cancer and tumors
Hmm.
in mice. The study from 1974, so one of the first studies that was ever done in this way. They basically had two groups of mice. Both were fed on exactly same diet, and then one group was fed antioxidants. And the whole group was exposed to UV radiation for about 22 weeks. And after 22 weeks, they literally picked all the mice that had the most of skin cancer, and they were
Okay.
comparing the both groups to see what is the occurrence of skin cancer and tumors within the two groups. And so what they found is that animals that were fed antioxidants, there was significantly less skin cancer, and the ones that did have skin cancer were really very, very small. And so how does it, translate to humans? We also know from studies that people that have skin cancer have a lower levels of skin antioxidants. So skin antioxidant and blood antioxidant level are very correlated. So we can measure the amount of antioxidants in our skin with different methods. For example, Raman spectroscopy is one of them. So it's just a small device that can basically uses laser light to measure and quantify amount of, for example, carotenoids. And so this is what they found, is that people that have skin cancer, the area of skin cancer, it's depleted of antioxidants. So
Wow.
it's very important to keep our antioxidant status, our blood levels and skin levels high, because our world is so polluted, and yeah, the skin
Absolutely.
is
It speaks.
constantly under attack.
Yes, I think that you're speaking to the importance of having a really good diet. And what I
Exactly.
just said earlier, all health comes from the inside out, because
Exactly.
obviously the body uses the raw materials, and I say this over and over. We provide the body with the raw materials to build everything, not just tissues, skin being one of
Mhm.
them, and organs, skin being one of them.
Mhm.
And I know that the body every year kind of regenerates all organ systems, all organs, all tissues, blood, everything. And I think it's important for people to know that if you are to be able to give this organ, being that it's exposed to the outside world, things from the
Mhm.
inside, so it's probably the only organ that we can actually provide with things from the inside via the diet, as well as from the outside with products such
Exactly.
as yours, so that we could actually really double up on the
Mhm.
protective mechanisms that we
Exactly.
can activate to make sure that we keep it healthy, to make sure that we keep it youthful,
Mhm.
to make sure that we keep it obviously elastic, so that it can stay with us and continue to protect us. Because
Mhm.
oftentimes when you have degradation of the skin, then naturally we would allow a lot of pathogens in
Mhm.
and end up sort of creating damage even from the outside world by allowing it inside, and creating damage
Mhm.
to even other organs and of course the immune system. So that's
Yeah.
important. I really wanted to touch on that. Now let's dive into the specifics and the benefits of the ingredients, so that we can give the listeners actionable information about how these oils
Mhm.
not only protect but also how they nourish the skin, which we just touched
Mhm.
on. But I want them to understand the power of holistic care. I really want to drive that message home. So
Mhm.
what are the most effective plant compounds that you've put into Quantum Pie, and how do they contribute to skin health beyond the sun protection?
Mhm. Yes. So perhaps some people know already, but when we eat diet rich in carotenoids, so these are the yellow, orange, and red pigments in fruits and vegetables,
Perfect.
our skin can change the color. So we can change our skin tone by introducing more carotenoids in our diet.
Amazing.
And so this is obviously our skin becomes more beautiful, but this is not only cosmetic reason. The reason is much more important. So the reason why our bodies concentrate carotenoids in our skin is because of their sunscreening properties. So
Mhm.
plants produce carotenoids for exactly the same reason, to help with sun damage and also to capture light and assist in photosynthesis.
Mhm.
But the primary reason is this antioxidant and the sunscreening action. So when we eat diet rich in carotenoids, our bodies concentrate carotenoids in the most sun-exposed tissues. So this is very interesting because it's a dynamic process. So it's not, we don't have, carotenoids are not uniformly spread everywhere in our bodies. So the forehead, the nose, the shoulders are the areas that will have the highest concentration of carotenoids. Because
Amazing.
our bodies can see where the most sun exposure is, and that's where it concentrates these compounds. So what we also know from studies of carotenoids and other phytochemicals is that, for example, when they're depleted, let's say we use alcohol wipes. If you use alcohol wipes, the levels of carotenoids in that tissue will deplete. It will drop down to maybe 50 or below 50%. But when the carotenoids are repleted, it comes from the top down. So what happens is our bodies put carotenoids into the sebum and sweat glands. And so from the deeper layers of the skin, they come to the top of the skin and they basically go down. So that's how it happens. So because we know this science, this is how it works, I wanted to create face serum that mimics this process. So basically repleting carotenoids and all the other compounds from the top down. So this is the natural way for the body to work.
So, wow. So this speaks to the wisdom of the body. So it knows exactly where the
Exactly.
most damage is, and it sends all of the protection and all the
Exactly.
protective factors there. And thank you for
Yeah.
speaking to some of the fruits and vegetables that are so important. Not that I'm trying to take away from the various diets that people are so bought into, such as the carnivore diet, but I really
Mhm.
want people to understand the massive and crucial importance of the plants, which
Yes.
provide us with so much of what the body needs and
Mhm.
recognizes,
Mhm.
not only for its own health, but it's for its protection, for its
Mhm.
regeneration, for its detoxification, and so many of the other pathways and mechanisms that are in place in the body. And the body's just waiting for you to provide it with the essential nutrients and also with the raw materials so that it can actually activate those mechanisms.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
This is so amazing. You are speaking my
Yeah.
language, and I'm blown away by the depth of knowledge you have about this, because I have spoken to many dermatologists here in Canada, and nobody has the depth of knowledge and expertise that you have about not just skin and its levels,
Yeah.
but also about how it interacts with outside factors to be able to regenerate and keep itself
Yeah.
healthy and
Mhm.
protect itself.
Yeah,
So,
but if you ask what are the most beneficial compounds, and maybe I didn't fully explain it. So carotenoids are one,
mhm,
but what we know from studies and from our own of studies of our own skin,
mhm.
human skin, but also from animals and from plants, is that all these compounds, they work in synergy. So we
Yes.
can't just use one compound because it can become oxidized and toxic, basically.
Yes.
So any single compound in high quantities in one area can become toxic as well, can become oxidized. So plants work in synergy. So for example, vitamin E always needs presence of vitamin C. And carotenoids also need other compounds. So once they're oxidized, they can become regenerated. Otherwise, they become pro-oxidant. So when I was formulating Quantum Pi, it was very important to me that it contains the highest range of different phytochemicals so that they can keep regenerating each other, just like it happens in nature. So,
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because I remember, and I'm a big fan of having a varied diet and one that's balanced. So that's what I
mhm,
always reinforce with everybody that I work with, and of course, like on any of the content I put out. So the way that I usually address this so that people can understand it, because you see a lot of people who run to take specific supplements like vitamin C. Everybody wants
mhm,
to load on vitamin C and they take it. So this is a fraction. You take this one particular vitamin and you leave it,
mhm,
you take it in high quantities by itself. But just like you said, there's actually other things, other factors, other nutrients that must be
mhm.
present for this vitamin, for vitamin C, to be able to have the intended outcomes in the body that you are looking to get.
Exactly,
So if you were to look at things like, if you take an apple, there are hundreds of nutrients in
exactly,
proper ratios, and they all work together when they are ingested together. But oftentimes
exactly,
what these companies do is they fraction out specific important, and I'm not going to discount the importance of these vitamins and minerals, but when they're isolated, they don't have their counterpart. And of course, this goes for calcium and magnesium and sodium and
exactly.
potassium. They
Mhm,
actually look for each other. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that in the
mhm,
absence of their counterparts, they're actually oxidative. So they actually cause
mhm.
damage rather than benefit.
Exactly, yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's
So
very
for example,
important.
what I found very interesting, there are studies to show that, for example, if you measure amount of carotenoids in a tissue, so in a living tissue with Raman spectroscopy, then if you introduce, for example, vitamin C into the diet, the amount of carotenoids increases in the tissue because the body knows how much is not too much. So it needs to maintain the level. So the antioxidant network, which is body's like first line of defense, which is made not on our endogenous antioxidants or antioxidant enzymes, but of these photoprotective compounds from plants. So this network is maintained by the body continuously, but obviously to prevent toxicity and oxidative damage from too many compounds in one area, the body keeps it in check. So then once we ramp up our amount of vitamin C or E, the level of carotenoids can also increase in a tissue, because it is then safe to have more of them, because there's more of the team players
This just
to work
speaks to,
together.
yes, it speaks to how wise and the amazing intelligence that is built into the body. A lot of times we look at how we measure things, not knowing how many mechanisms, millions of mechanisms are in place. And oftentimes, even when I work with my patients and my clients, I ask them like, how have you ever wondered why the heart beats every so often? Like, why doesn't it beat once a minute? Why doesn't it beat once every 5 minutes? Why doesn't it beat once every 10 minutes? There is a wisdom that's built in that the body knows it has to beat at that specific rhythm for it to get the benefits. And if you are going to exercise and the heart rate will increase, the body knows that it can actually get more benefits, and it puts into motion all things so that you can get the benefits from that increased heart rate. There are so many things in place that we take for granted. So I'm glad that you brought that so that people understand what happens in the skin. It goes beyond just putting something on and
Yeah.
expecting it to just do one thing. Millions of things happen, and it works synergistically and in conjunction with what happens from the inside and some other things that we bring into the body from the diet. So thank you so much for that. Now, so when even when I introduced you, I know that you are very big on this particular thing of body wisdom, and that's why I wanted to bring it, because I want to educate the audience so that they can understand your product philosophy, because obviously you went much deeper with such wisdom than just, I want to put a product out on the market and I want people to buy it because it's gonna help them. You have such a deep philosophy. And I also want to understand the broader movement, because it sounds like you want to help people understand that it goes beyond some of the surface level stuff towards trusting the natural body processes. You are such a believer of that. And I want to empower listeners to rethink their reliance on the chemicals, the synthetic based products. So, how does Quantum Pi align with the concept of body wisdom over chemical solutions in sun protection?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, so obviously this whole story of my picture going viral, it took me on a path that I never studied for. I had no idea about, so I had to start from the
Yes.
scratch. I literally had no idea. I mean, right now we've got ChatGPT, and it's so much easier to research because you can have a conversation with this machine, right? And it can help you with, explaining some concepts that maybe aren't easy to understand. But when I was doing this 6 years ago, when I started, I had no idea where to start. So I was looking all over the place. I was in the quantum physics, I was in the quantum mechanics, the plant physiology. I wanted to understand first why plants do what they do and what these compounds do in plants. And then I went into studies like cell studies and skin studies and animal and so on, to see what are the most beneficial compounds for skin photoprotection. And so this is how I learned about, this whole untold science. There's literally 60 years of science that shows how this photoprotective system in our skin, and I think most people don't even know what the photoprotective system. So photoprotective is basically sun protective system in our skin. And I think myself, I only was aware of melanin as a protective pigment, but I didn't know anything beyond that. I didn't know that anything in my diet can affect how my skin responds to sun. I didn't know that my own sun exposure habits can also make my skin more resilient to sun damage. But there's so many things we can do. I didn't know that there is specific diet that can make your skin more sensitive to sun. So basically, not knowing anything meant I had to learn from zero, and I went so many different paths, so many different paths, and kind of this knowledge became like this huge, huge body of knowledge from all the different perspectives. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a product that works with the body. So based on what we know from science, how the body works, how it uses these compounds, what kind of interactions are between all these different molecules, I wanted to create something that is exactly what the body does naturally. So it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not trying to introduce some kind of chemical that's never been used on the skin before, but it's basically using nature the way it was designed and the way it works. And you asked before, and I think I didn't answer this question. You asked if all plants have these compounds. They all do. So at the beginning, I was also very fixed on like, okay, this is the most sun protective compound from here, from here. For example, in my serum, I have extract from ratani root, which is it's a shrub, hemiparasitic, that grows in Andes. And Peruvian Andes have the highest UV exposure in the world.
Oh,
The
wow.
highest UV index, yes. So UV index is basically it's a rating from 1 to I think no over than 16 that measures the intensity of UV light that certain area of the world is exposed to. And so the Peruvian Andes have the highest UV index in the world. And so this shrub, ratani root, it produces some of the most photoprotective compounds. So that's one of the extracts that I'm using in my face serum. And this extract protects from UVA and from UVB. Another extract that I'm using is astaxanthin. And it's you probably know about astaxanthin, right?
Yes, for energy production. So I recommend this. I recommend this for energy. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so energy, because the incredible thing about astaxanthin is that the chemical structure that it has, it's got two polar ends and non-polar middle, just like our cellular membranes. So, for example, when we think about efficacy of some kind of a compound as an antioxidant, we have to think about how is it able to protect the cellular membranes? Because when you protect the cell membranes, you protect the cell, the nucleus, the DNA, everything that's inside. So it's a very important thing. And so when it comes to carotenoids, for example, vitamin E, because of their chemical structure, they can only enter the cell in a very specific way. So what astaxanthin does, because it's built exactly like cellular membranes, so polar ends, non-polar middle, it can go through the whole membrane. So it inserts itself into mitochondrial membrane. It has affinity for mitochondria. And because mitochondria are the biggest, oxygen producing, because of the production of energy, they produce a lot of free radicals. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted
So
to actually mention. So it's in the
exactly.
mitochondria that the cell actually produces ATP. So
Exactly.
ATP
Yeah.
is what is known as energy, adenosine triphosphate. So that's actually the energy that's what we refer to as energy. So that's amazing. So it enters the cell straight to the mitochondria. It supports it in its energy production, which is why I recommend it. But I had no idea that it had such amazing functions for the cell. Of course, each cell produces ATP, so even the skin cells obviously need it.
Yes,
It makes
exactly. And
perfect
when we think
sense.
about sunburn is the majority of damage that is caused by UVB light, for example, is to mitochondria. Because mitochondria already are sites of higher free radical production
Yes.
because of the work they do. It's
Yes.
very important to help them with antioxidants to remove these free radicals. And so when astaxanthin enters the mitochondrial membrane, it removes these free radicals from mitochondria. Therefore, it allows the energy production to continue without interruptions. And so it supports skin and tissues and muscles and the heart, the brain, the retina, all of it. Yeah.
So it supports the energy production. And of course, this is one of the compounds that you use to be able to support the organ
Mm-hmm.
so that it
Mm-hmm.
can do its job and contribute to the energy of the body, to the energy that even the organ itself needs to be able to regenerate itself. Every cell,
Exactly.
we know it has to eat, so it needs nutrients, it needs oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we don't want to suppress the oxygenation or the
Mm-hmm.
income of oxygen. And of course, it needs to be hydrated, and it also releases its own waste matter, much like how we do. Every cell is
Exactly.
really like a human being. It eats, it
Yeah.
breathes, it poops, and it
Yes.
drinks.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
very,
Yeah.
very important that it has. That's why I'm such a big proponent, and of course we're aligned in that, that we give the body what we have out of nature, which is the only thing that the body itself recognizes. So the chemical
Mm-hmm.
compounds that are produced and which are synthetic, that are produced in factories, are not something that the body can utilize, and are not something that the body can actually use for its protection and for its
Exactly.
cellular functions.
Yeah.
Now let's teach everybody about the overarching importance of a healthier lifestyle, and let's address the misconceptions, because I'm sure there are many,
Mm-hmm.
and clear up the doubts, and obviously to reinforce the effectiveness of natural methods, because I do not want people to turn to any of these chemical things that and synthetic
Mm-hmm.
things that are out in the market. So from obviously you're such a pioneer, and you've worked at this since 6 years ago, and you know it to such a depth. I really wanted the audience to understand that. What misconceptions do people have about natural sun protection? And
Mm-hmm.
probably even more so, how does Quantum Pi, your product, how does it address these misconceptions? Because everybody has some
Mm-hmm.
sort of misconception about sunscreen.
Yeah. So I think the biggest misconceptions when it comes to oils and sun protection is that people assume that because they're lipids or oils, which we use for frying, you're gonna fry your skin.
Ah, yes.
So that was one of the comments I had under my viral picture, is that
Hmm.
we use oils, you'll fry your skin when you put it on your skin. And the misconception is, I mean, cooking oils and high quality CO2 extracted cosmetic oils are very, very different. So, you know, when you make this assumption that all oils are the same, it's not really the right way of thinking about it, because cold pressed or CO2 extracted, even better, oils contain everything that a little seedling needs to survive in the environment. So that includes, all the sun protective compounds that are already in the oil or in the seed or in a husk or in a fruit that the seedling will get, when it cracks open. So this is the difference. Like we cannot compare it. So these cosmetic oils have thousands of compounds that work together synergistically, and so when we put it on our skin, it already mimics the way our body redistributes these compounds on our skin. So like I said, they go, into the sebum and into the sweat glands, and with the sweat glands, they go from the inside layer of the skin to the top of the skin, and they sink down. So Quantum Pi, basically being oil-based product, does it exactly the same way. Yeah, so it's
Okay.
completely natural. There's no preservatives other than rosemary extract. So it's 100% natural, completely nature-inspired product. Yeah.
Of course, we're going to give people the information necessary for them to find your product, but
Mhm.
I wanted to emphasize, so as of late, research shows that a lot of the damage done to skin, especially in the context of sunburns,
Mhm.
is as a result of a lot of the toxicity. Okay,
Mhm.
so to go a couple of steps back, the skin is one of the biggest organs of detoxification,
Mhm.
and the skin detoxifies through
Mhm.
sweat. So when
Mhm.
through perspiration. So when we sweat, basically, and it's done in nature has such an amazing balance of all things. When we sweat, the pores open, so they
Mhm.
dilate, and a lot of what's inside comes through the layers of the skin, and they are eliminated out. And this happens when we are sick. So when we have the flu
Mhm.
and we get a fever, so the body brings up the temperature to kill the pathogens inside, and
Mhm.
then they say the fever broke and I sweated out. So the sweat is when the body actually eliminates the pathogens through the skin, the biggest organ in the body, and it's an organ of elimination. So when we have all of these toxins trapped inside the body, and we expose ourselves to heat outside, especially when we go to the beach and it's 35 degrees Celsius and it's amazing and we want to get a suntan, thereby, again, the pores open and the body kickstarts the mechanism of detoxification and we sweat. When you have people lathering up a whole bunch of chemicals on top of the skin, thereby sealing the entry and the exit of the skin pores. Now you are burning those chemicals onto your skin, which will seep inside the skin and damage it. And this is why we have these sunburns. Or if you are going to have no protection, if you're not going to put anything on the skin, and the skin now is naturally going to open up the pores and say, okay, let's eliminate all of these crazy toxins that are inside the body from poor diet, really bad beverages, alcohol, smoking, chemicals in the smoking, vaping. And that's again how we get all of those things. So, a diet that has all of these really bad oils, canola oil, heavily GMO'd,
Exactly.
all of these crazy sunflower oil, the seed oils that are so heavily processed, deodorized, full of hexane. So they use all of these harsh chemicals to
Exactly.
process them, and then these chemicals being present in these oils that, let's say, French fries, people, if you go to a restaurant and they fry their French fries in really crappy oils, and then you ingest that and the body says, "Ooh, this is really bad, let me detox it out." When it's coming out through your skin in the presence of heat, you are going to burn the chemicals from that seed oil that your French fries were fried in. And it's that's burning. The skin itself would not burn naturally if all of these toxins. So it's the toxins that are burning, which is why it's important. And obviously, Quantum Pi only gives food and nourishment to the skin. And if you apply that in the presence of a really good diet, much like what you have been obviously encouraging people to have, you have double the protection.
Exactly. So I'm glad you mentioned seed oils. So seed oils are mostly polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Yes.
And so what's unique about these fatty acids is because they have a lot of double bonds. Double bonds create sites where oxygenation can happen. And so what we know from science is that when so our ancestral diet was majority of saturated and monosaturated fatty acids, which are much more stable because saturated acids don't have double bonds. So they're very stable. They're not exposed to, they're not easily oxidized. Monosaturated have one double bond, so they're also resistant to oxygen. But polyunsaturated fatty acids, like omega-6 specifically, have a lot of double bonds. And so they're very easily oxidized. And so what happens is when our adipose tissue, when the composition changes and starts to incorporate a lot of these polyunsaturated fats, we have this inflammatory situation going on in the body constantly. So it's a chronic inflammation.
Yeah.
When you think about chronic inflammation in the fat cells of your skin, then what we know from science, there was one experiment, I think from the 60s, where they found that after 5 years of a diet high in polyunsaturated fatty acids, the amount of vitamin E and other antioxidants dropped very, very heavily. So this chronic inflammation basically depletes the antioxidants in our blood. And because antioxidants in our blood represents support the antioxidant network in our skin, that means our skin antioxidants are very depleted as well. So this is the connection between seed oil rich diet and sunburn as well. So it's not only, the fact that you've got chemicals in seed oils because they're so heavily processed, but also when our bodies have a lot of these seed oils inside, and our basically what happens is the cellular membranes of all the trillions of cells that we're made of, they start to incorporate higher amounts of these omega-6s into the cellular membranes, and they're so easily oxidized. They cause a lot of damage. So sunburn is basically oxidative stress in the mitochondria and in the skin cells because of these polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are so easily damaged within the skin membrane. And so they cause a lot of, produce a lot of oxidative free radicals. And you know, once our body's antioxidant network is overcome by the amount of these free radicals, this is what sunburn is. Like, your body cannot keep up with the damage that is being caused by the sun and by the seed oils combined together, and then it ends up in a really bad sunburn.
Yeah, so for everybody to understand, when we talk about oxidation, think of an apple. If you cut it in half and you just leave it on the table, what happens to it? It starts to brown, right? It starts to
Yeah.
go brown. Same thing with
Mhm.
potatoes. Once you open them and you leave them, they start to become black. So that is oxidation, so that you guys understand.
Mhm.
And when you hear Sylvia referring to polyunsaturated fatty acids, if you've ever seen any kind of literature, those are the PUFAs. So if you've seen
Yeah.
that acronym, that's what she's referring to. And those
Mhm.
are the things that are not looked at as good things. And of
Mhm.
course, our diets prior to what's happening right now in the world and the all out assault on the food supply was drastically different back in olden days when food was left
Mhm.
as Mother Nature had made
Pre-industrial.
it.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, like in a very simplistic way of describing it, when the body does not have enough time and the capacity or the bandwidth to eliminate toxins at the same rate that they are brought in, obviously
Mhm.
the body would want to be able to eliminate them faster than they are brought in. It does have the capacity to handle a little bit of toxicity because it can mitigate it and then it can eliminate it. But because we bring it in faster than it can actually eliminate it or even mitigate it, what the body does, the least damaging and the least risky place for the body to put toxins is the fat cells. If
Exactly.
toxicity is shoved into organs, you can bet that cancer would happen a lot quicker, a lot faster, and the respective organ would not be able to function anymore. So we would lose
Mhm.
a lot of function from what you see right now.
Mhm.
When people's brains stop working the way they're supposed to, it's because the toxicity level is such that the body has degraded that specific organ. But oftentimes you will see that toxicity is shoved into fat cells. Those are
Mhm.
the easiest and also the least risky organs of the body where they can be put. And if you look at what we call cellulite, so that misshapen
Mhm.
shape, if I can call
Yeah.
it that,
Love. Mhm.
of tissue is such that if you have, let's say, a bag of garbage, if you look at it, it's not perfectly round, it's not
Mhm.
perfect in its shape, the surface of it is not smooth. That's exactly how it works. If you were to give that kind of visual, it's you shoving a lot of garbage in a bag and it's not
Mhm.
going to be smooth and the elasticity is going to go because there's only so much you can shove in a garbage bag before it breaks.
Mhm.
So that is basically what Sylvia's talking about when you shove a whole bunch of toxicity into the fat cells.
Yeah.
So it's important for you guys to recognize and have a visual of what happens internally.
Mhm.
Obviously Sylvia knows chemistry to a very, very deep level. She understands even the chemical bonds, but I want you guys to understand from a visual perspective exactly how it works and what is happening
Mhm.
inside the body at cellular level that we don't often see. So we don't, I think if people were to be able to recognize what's happening truly, they would probably think twice before they would ingest and consume some of the things that they ingest, consume, or even put on their
Mhm.
skin. So I
Mhm.
really
Exactly.
wanted for people to understand that. Now, Sylvia, so you have such an amazing product. You really understand the mechanisms. You understand what compounds from plants are protective, nourishing to the skin. You understand exactly how they interface with the skin, how they interface with the inner environment of our body. Where can people find not only your product, but even if they wanted to ask you, how do they get a hold of you? Where are you on social media? How can they contact you? And where can they find your product? Do you have a website?
Yes, yes. So my skincare brand is called EarthChild, And the address is earthchild.co. And my Instagram name is the same. It is earthchild.co. And that's where you can find me. You can message me. You can also reach me on my website, send me a message via website. And you can buy my product on my website.
Excellent. So you guys heard, I'm going to have this in the show notes, but earthchild.co, and you'll find earthchild.co also on Instagram if you want to go and follow the account. I'm sure that there's probably links in your bio so that they can get access
That's
to the
right, yeah.
website to be able to purchase your products. I highly suggest you at least give it a try so that you could see exactly what it's going to do for your skin. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you will see her skin is amazing. I'm sure you can. But for those of you that are listening on an audio platform, please visit earthchild.co so that you can have some visuals that will really confirm what she's been talking about in this show. Thank you so much, Sylvia. Is there anything I haven't asked? Because of course I don't have the depth of knowledge that you have that the audience would benefit from, learning, anything of that nature?
Yes, so I think one thing that I would like to say is that there's one product that I would recommend to anyone that wants to support their skin from inside and out. And
Okay.
I already mentioned this name, astaxanthin. So it's
Yes.
an incredible carotenoid. It is what gives salmon its color and also the stamina to swim up the river. It what colors the flamingo, the lobster, the krill, and all the other little compounds. And there was a study done by one of producers of astaxanthin, where they basically the producers of bioastin, so astaxanthin from Hawaii, after producing their first supplement, they had a meeting in a team, and they were like, okay, what did you notice? And so some people noticed that their skin seemed to be more resilient to sunburn. So they decided to design a study to test it. So they had two groups of people. They measured the minimal erythema dose. So basically, they took a beam of light to see how much UV light it takes to cause minimal redness. So that's called minimal erythema dose at the beginning of experiment and after 9 weeks of supplementing. And so what they found between two groups, the placebo and the astaxanthin group, and they were receiving only 4 milligrams of astaxanthin. So it's a very small dose. I take 12. So after 9 weeks of supplementing, they found that the average increase in sun protection went up by 400%.
400.
Yes. So after 9 weeks of supplementing with astaxanthin, the resilience of skin to sunburn increases in this group by 400% on average. So what you can do is you can take astaxanthin just in the summer, or you can take it all year round because it's an incredible antioxidant. But what you can do as well for your skin, you can empty one capsule into, for example, coconut oil and apply it on your skin as part of your skincare routine. So instead of petrochemicals or body lotions or anything like this, use coconut oil or jojoba oil or some other oil that you like, mix it with this one capsule of astaxanthin and use this as part of your routine. Because this way you can increase the amount of antioxidants, astaxanthin, in your skin by many times. So it's an internal sunscreen, also external sunscreen. And this way you support your skin in the most meaningful way. You don't use chemicals.
Oh, that's such an amazing tip. My God. You guys,
Yeah.
if you took anything away from this show, aside from the fact that she's got such an amazing product, that right there is, I mean, I was blown away when you said 400%. So clearly from the inside out,
Yes.
you can actually build incredible protection of your skin from the effects of the sun. And remember, it's actually so much better to do it that way because you still have not sealed the skin's ability to absorb sun to be able to convert it into vitamin D, which is absolutely
Exactly.
crucial for
Exactly.
immune health, especially here in North America, where we have, of course, in Canada, we have a good 3 months of summer, and that's about it. So you really have to support
Mhm.
the vitamin D throughout the year to be able to support your immune system throughout the year. But that's such an amazing tip. So astaxanthin, just in conjunction with a good oil, please do not use
Exactly.
seed oils like we were talking
Yes.
about. Really
Yeah.
good quality, cold extracted, preferably oil such as coconut oil or any other oil of choice that's good and clean and hexane
Raspberry is
free.
great. Germ.
Yes, exactly. Even castor oil would probably work. Just
Castor
mix
oil,
it
yes.
in and
Yes.
apply it to the skin, and that will be all the sun protection that you will need. And of course, if you want to enhance the beauty, elasticity of your skin, and especially for youthfulness and anti-aging properties, please earthchild.co so that you could get your own serum. Everybody, thank you so much for joining me this week on Health Confidential, joining me and Sylvia. Of course, she dropped so much wisdom. Thank you so much, Sylvia.
Thank
If
you.
you like this show, please, and if you found value in it, I would really appreciate a rating on iTunes and tell a friend about the show so that they too can go and take advantage of this amazing product that Sylvia was talking about. You guys can find me on Instagram at simone.gisondi and, of course, on my website, simonegisondi.com. And we will see you on the next show.
Super. Thank you so much, Simone.
Thank you, Sylvia. And hopefully we'll be able to come back when you release your next product so that we can inform the audience of the next amazing thing that you bring to the market. Stay tuned, everybody.
Thank you so much.